2026, according to the World Bank. Details of this on page 20. Right below that, we have 3 stories, and one is on page 19 that says, daily fuel consumption jumps to 72 million liters. Subsidy hits 541.66 billion naira. And on page 2, PDP zones national chair slot to Southwest, North gets secretary. PDP zones national chairs slot to Southwest, North gets secretary. Details on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. On page 7, AMCON seizes ex-Governor Ahmed houses, freezes accounts over 5 billion naira debt. Page 7. There are 2 windows there beside the, the masthead. And these are stories on page 23 and 24. On page 23, cooking gas marketers lack facilities, says NLNG price hits 7,000 naira. And on page 24, let private managers operate port scanners. Stakeholders tell federal government. Below the masthead, we have the big story, which is rather political, I would say. Jega Utomi groups, others team up against APC, PDP, unveil party on October 1. Jega Utomi groups, others team up against APC, PDP, unveil party on October 1. On pages 2 and 9, you get the details of this. But the writers here are that PRP, ADC, LP to form nucleus of new mega party and planned convention. The second rider is 95 associations seek registration as political parties, more to emerge. And that's the main story on the Punch newspaper. And coming down a little bit, we have on page 7, Niger reduces tuition as varsity students lawmaker protest fee hike. And on page 8, residents finger Sokoto commissioner in bandits attack and burn houses. Can you hear the Kingsley?
That's right.
Residents finger Sokoto commissioner in bandits attack and burn houses. That's unfortunate, brother.
Yeah, big time. There's no question about that. But we do hope that it's not a misguided mob.
Yeah, let's just hope it's so.
Yes.
On page 9, we have cholera kill 329 Kano residents in 6 months, says the government. At the bottom of the page, or the front page of the Punch newspaper, we have 3 stories. On page 7, El-Rufai masquerading as leader, exporting banditry to the south, says Akere Dolu. On page 4, gunmen invade Abuja hotel, kill policemen in shootout, injure others. And finally, on page 12, Bello raises campaign team, says rotational presidency alien to APC. Bello raises campaign team, says rotational presidency alien to APC. Details of that on page 12. And the photo story here on the front page of the Punch newspaper is Borno State Governor Professor Baba Gana Zulum during his visit to the Maiduguri flour mills, Maiduguri. That's on Wednesday. Kingsley?
All right, thank you. Let's take a look also at the Daily Trust newspaper. Below the name flag, you have the following headlines. We won't allow foreigners overrun Nigeria. This according to the military. Uncertainty as Lagos Airport Terminal Project stalls. Contractor abandons work. Senate approves budget framework, pegs oil price at $57 per barrel. And the lead story is a double-decker headline, 2 years after MOU. Federal government's $2.3 billion Cms Power Project flops. Project at design stage, phase 1 yet to begin. That's according to officials in one of the riders, 2 other riders. 2021 target of 7,000 megawatts, not feasible. Government creates company, shops for engineers. And then on the front page there is a photograph that tells an old familiar story. Pensioners under the auspices of the Local Government Pensioners Association in Ogun State blocking the 2 main gates of the Secretariat in Abeokuta to protest non-payment of their outstanding gratuity. Same old story. Electoral bill, that's the kicker. Fresh dust as Senate raises conference panel. Anti-open grazing law, southern governors hit back at El-Rufai. AMCON takes over ex-Kwara governor's mansion, over 5 billion naira debt. Buhari and Ganduje mourn as Emir Ogaya dies at 91. That's on page 6. Well, these are the stories that we have on the front pages of the two papers we're taking a look at. We have an editorial from The Nation. But there should be tremendous concern about what is happening to the Cms Power Project.
Right.
Because a couple of years ago, when the MOU was signed, it was indicated as a game changer in the power sector. It appears from what the paper is saying that the project is stalled. Well, they say it's flops. That's what they have said. But what are the causative factors? What has happened? Where are we, and when are we going to make progress with regard to all of this? I recall that on Good Morning Nigeria some weeks ago, on account of the incessant power outages arising from the collapse of the national grid, we had a conversation on the issues around transmission, and a number of ideas came up. But we do hope that with the new helmsman, because the former Minister of Power was fired by the President along with his counterpart in agriculture, that we're going to have a new momentum in the power sector. We can't be going back and forth, seeking to generate 7,000 megawatts. How much of that can be wheeled through the national grid, and how much of that gets to the consumers?
And even ultimately, you know, when the Siemens issue came up, and then the contract was signed and sealed, there was a lot of enthusiasm among the Nigerian public, really. They were just looking forward to this because it seems as if a lot is going to be gotten out of it, and that is added to the Mobile Plateau issue, which was supposed to have come on stream too. But as you said, really, Kingsley, the power sector is really still not something to write home about, and that might have informed why the president fired the Minister for Power with the new husband. I think something good is going to come out of that. But Nigerians are still really waiting, because power is the game changer. And of course, it seems as if we've got to get it right as much as we can and as soon as possible to get the economy going.
Precisely. But there's also a subtext of this, and it has to do with the timelines that governments at all levels, federal, state, local, and even corporations, the timelines that we give for achieving certain goals and certain targets. Now, it appears increasingly that perhaps as a policy consideration, we should be less optimistic in our timelines. I'm not saying make it open-ended, but we should be more realistic. Sometimes when you read certain documents, policy documents or blueprints, they are telling you we will achieve X, Y, Z by the end of 2021, or by the end of 2022, this is what we are going to achieve. And then implementation starts. And then somewhere along the line, we do not, of course, factor in, even from the very beginning, what obstacles there are likely to be with implementation. And as you do know, implementation is one of our principal challenges. The human factor is also very critical in implementation. Here we are hearing 2021 target of 7,000 megawatts, not feasible. So 2 years ago, somebody was sitting down fancifully and making projections and said by the end of 2021, this is what we are going to have. Let nobody blame COVID. I mean, COVID has become the whipping boy.
No, it's out of
it.
Really.
For all kinds of things.
Far much more out of it.
Absolutely.
And then when you look at that too, you know, by 2021, or even right now, between now and 2022, a new timeline will be set.
That's right.
And here we go again. If care is not taken, we may have that kind of information much later by the time the timeline lapses, maybe in 2-3 years to come when that timeline comes on board. And I think the implementation thing is very key here. I think authorities and Nigerians should really take up this issue very seriously. Policies are good in this country, Kingsley, and then the implementation becomes really a worrisome issue. Let's be a little bit pragmatic and realistic.
Absolutely,
really. Yeah.
Absolutely, Nadabo. And you know, because we fail to meet certain deadlines, the cost implication also then comes in. Because you find there would then be calls for variation. Of course, inflation would have kicked in. And sometimes when you miss your deadlines, in the sense that you are supposed, your counterpart role that you are supposed to play, you haven't played it, there could be penalties. Yeah. So why don't we be realistic from the very beginning and say this is what we are going to do? Sometimes some of these things sound, I'm saying, not just the case of the power sector now, or some kinds of, they just sound like political statements. You know, that they're not. Let us be more realistic and say this is what we want to achieve, and then you go gradually. But more importantly, as public policy analysts will say, make a forecast of the impediments you are likely to have with implementation, and then see how you can overcome them.
And there are experiences too. At least we must learn from mistakes in the past. What's the editorial saying right there, I can say?
That's right, Nada, but it's coming from the Nation newspaper, and the title is Uneasy Stalemate. It says, Southeast states must win the people's confidence to render IPOB ineffectual. Okay. Now, part of the editorial says that from all indications, the tension between elected governments in the Southeast and IPOB championing the Biafra Republic is getting increasingly more combustible, dangerous, and unmanageable. Unfortunately, it is the ordinary people of the region that suffer the consequences of this confrontation. Now, it says it appears that both the Southeast governors and IPOB are on the horns of a dilemma. As for the governors, they ask people to ignore sit-at-home orders, but lack the capacity to protect the lives and properties of those who listen to them. If the governors begin to speak more courageously in pursuit of equity and justice for the people, they will, of course, enjoy more trust and confidence, and it will be difficult for non-state actors to fill the void of credibility.
And it also seems as if a lot needs to be done in the South. It's about the IPOP issue. And one worrisome thing about the whole thing is that IPOP has been proscribed already. And I think security agents, governments, and politicians in the Southeast, indeed Nigeria, should take up the issue as much as possible and try to see to it that it becomes very ineffective and do the needful in case of trying to arrest the situation. The governors, I think, might be in a dilemma, but really a lot more is expected from them in trying to see to it that especially the sit-at-home issue carefully is addressed, and it doesn't seem as if there are two or parallel governments there.
Well, very well said, Nadabo. In principle, I mean, civil disobedience is a recognized form of protest. Just to say, look, we won't go to work, we won't do anything, and so on and so forth, is recognized. But what is worrisome, and we have seen that with regard to some of the activities of IPOB, is the wanton violence that accompanies their activities, as well as their desire to enforce their sit-at-home order. One of the consequences is disruption of exams in parts of Imo State. That's the WASC exams. And then shops have been burnt and persons molested and so on and so forth. But at least one governor in the Southeast stood up recently, and that's the governor of Anambra State, to urge the people of Anambra State to ignore the sit-at-home order, which is supposed to be every Monday. This last Monday, it appears that there was less compliance, even though parts of Onitsha, I understand, still complied because, of course, they were scared of the attacks by IPOB members. What has happened is that it appears that even the planners in IPOB are not thinking of the consequences of their actions on the Southeast itself. Businesses, of course, are being affected.
Truly, that's the issue.
Infrastructure is being destroyed, by the same IPOB elements. So whose infrastructure? Is it infrastructure in the FCT that you are damaging? It is your own infrastructure that you are damaging. You are killing people. Persons are scared of coming to your zone, and ultimately, what will happen? They have given notice that if Nnamdi Kanu, who is standing trial, is not brought to court, then they will organize a 1 month sit-at-home in the Southeast. Again, they have to ask themselves the question: you sit at home for 1 month in the Southeast, so who suffers?
Now, you see here, really, not only who suffers as such. When you look at even the examination thing you mentioned, Kinsley, this is an examination that is being written all across West Africa, I must say. And if students or pupils in the Southeast will not be able to write that examination, which means they are going to be left behind. And that will mean that that is being postponed at least for a year or two when things get normal. And then looking at the consequences of this, a lot of setback is what that means. Talking about the economy too, of course, when that happens, imagine Southeast is more or less like a very strong hub of economy in this country, commercial activities in this area. And then imagine the kind of losses that, the people in the Southeast will incur if the sit-at-home continues. Imagine a Monday, every Monday, 4 Mondays, in a month, and then, it's great. It's a huge loss.
Big time. No question about that. We do hope, as the saying goes, there are stakeholders in the environment. There are key influencers, who can also speak, no matter how hot a person's head is. Obviously, at some point you will listen to others. It's not simply a question of law enforcement.
No.
It's not simply a question of law enforcement. As the editorial points out, it is that the people themselves must have credible voices to listen to, and then, of course, try and rein in the criminal elements amongst the IPOB people. There was an incident in one of the states this last Monday. Somebody who claimed to be an IPOB member was seeking to enforce the stay-at-home order, and the traders descended on him.
That's unfortunate, really. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and then we'll now take a break. Our discussion on our main topic today continues in a moment. Stay with us.
The federal government, through NPHCDA, commenced Phase 2 vaccination of all persons 18 years and above with safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines approved by WHO and certified by NAFDAC. Special arrangement has been made for staff, their dependents and retirees of ministries, departments and agencies of government, private corporate organizations and non-governmental organizations. To benefit from this special arrangement, visit www.nphcda.gov.ng/corporate vaccination/ to obtain, fill and submit the Google form. NPHCDA will contact you within 48 hours. Protect yourself, your family and your workplace against COVID-19. COVID-19 vaccines are free, safe and effective. For further inquiries, call 0700-220-1122 or send a mail to covid19.vaccination@nphcda.gov.ng. This message is from the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency.
Kehinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Taiyi suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around, or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
I enjoy Nollywood film. Orisun, PBO, AMC be my best channel. But ST Nollywood Plus, they show the latest Nollywood blockbuster on top classic bouquet. How I want to watch them?
My pikin dey enjoy 5 children's channels. But you won't come add DreamWorks on top of.
I be telenovela lover, and I like ST Novella E and Starlight. But I hear say this series on ST Novella E Plus on top classic bouquet. The Totori person pass waiting I dey see now, and I won't watch them. Shall I go need pay 800 naira extra?
From September 1, Star Times, they summer you better package. But no fear, we no increase price. Join this offer. Make basic bouquet subscribers just pay for 1 month and then go fit to watch 3 Ogbonge extra channels from Classic Bouquet. This awoof never finish. Recharge Classic or Super Bouquet for 1 month and you fit be one of the 400 lucky people them. We go win smartphone. Terms and conditions, they shall. More value, same price. Star Times, enjoy digital life.
Title chasing, Manchester United will have to overcome one more hurdle when they welcome Aston Villa to Old Trafford. Will it continue to be their theatre of dreams, or can Aston Villa throw a spanner in their works? This Saturday, it's Manchester United versus Aston Villa on the Premier League Live, showing on the network service of the NTA from 12 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu and powered by Integral.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live from the studios of the Nigerian Television Authority. And it's a prompt for our conversation on Nigeria's response to flooding this morning. Let's take this background report put together by our correspondent, Joseph Watson.
Staring at danger yet daring it. Perhaps there were voices warning of impending risks of crossing the surging water. but forces of destruction dominated the minds of those who could not wait as they charged through into disaster. Similar reports of this nature have characterized the stories of flooding in Nigeria, with lives lost, many displaced, and property destroyed due to ignorance and negligence. Nigeria experiences flooding annually, following increase in rainfall and overflow of riverbanks into communities. The ravaging effect keeps spreading to all regions of the country. Since the 2012 flooding that many described as one of the worst in the country, Nigeria has not taken a break as it continues to experience year-on-year flood disasters. To curb this, authorities keep issuing flood warnings and urging persons living in prone areas to relocate to safer grounds, clearing of drainage channels, and have forged campaigns against building or construction on waterways. However, many have refused to heed to these warnings as deaths and destruction of property before the nation.
The only challenge we are having, like I always say, is some of the residents who are really not abiding by the early warning, especially the enlightened public.
Between August and September this year, flooding has wreaked havoc on every region of the country, with states like Rivers, Taraba, Benue, Kogi, Adamawa, Sokoto, and Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, among others, recently having sad stories to tell. The questions many keep asking are, why do Nigerians wait for flooding to hit them? What makes it difficult to pay attention to warning signs? And what strategy can bring all on board to avert future disasters? These questions will be served on the Good Morning Nigeria table for the guests to give insights.
And now to discuss the topic, first, let me introduce Engineer Clement Ize, Director General of Nigerian Hydrological Services. Good to have you on the program, sir.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Good morning, Nigeria.
We also have in our studio here Abbas Idris, Director General, FCT Emergency Management Agency. Thank you for joining us, Abbas.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Okay, and also with us here in the studios is Kayode Fagbemi, is Director, Relief and Rehabilitation of the National Emergency Management Agency. And by the way, all three guests who are here with us in the studios, they are regulars on Good Morning Nigeria whenever we are discussing flooding, and disaster management. Kayode, delighted to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for the privilege.
From our Port Harcourt Network Center, we have Godwin Tepiko, his Zonal Director, South of the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA. Mr. Tepiko, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Morning for having me.
All right, gentlemen, once again, our pleasure to have you. Just before we get into flooding, of course, we know that it is rain and therefore water that causes flooding. Beginning with Engineer Clem Nze, help us understand what is playing out. Here in the Federal Capital Territory, for instance, from where we are broadcasting at our national headquarters studios, we have noticed that perhaps the quantity and therefore the pattern of rainfall in the month of September looks like we are in July. And elsewhere around the country, there are reports of heavy rainfalls. So, just what is happening to the rainfall pattern before we start getting to the whole idea of flooding?
Thank you for such a leading question. The issue is the meteorological agency, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET, on the 2nd of February, made a pronouncement in terms of flooding, precipitation, rainfall, the onset and destination dates for each local government area in Nigeria. And refining their prediction, they now begin to give you 72 hourly what the rainfall will be in various parts of the country. Usually July, August, September, the just months are the peak months of the flooding in Nigeria. Now you can pin it down to the issue of climate change, For instance, NIMET made us to understand that there will be late onset for many places and early cessation. This is concentrating the amount of rainfall within shorter period of months, and that will translate to flooding. Now, as you rightly pointed out, in the month of September, we are having more flooding incidents, like what happened within like Abuja here where we are. So I think it is in line with the prediction that have been made by NIMET, and which have been, like I said, be making 72 hourly prediction or forecast. They will inform Nigerians 22, 23, 24 September. This is what we will have. And they will be emphatic about that in terms of precision, that you should not go and relax. What we have said is coming to pass, and unfortunately, if I use that word, it always comes to pass. So it is issue of climate change, and it is within the peak of flooding or rainfall in the country, July, August, September, and even it tappers it into October, which is likely to be the case this year.
Well, it seems we haven't really reached the peak yet.
Yes?
We haven't really reached the peak yet.
Now, for us, in our prediction for flooding, going by what happened in 2012, 2020, and 2021, we are seeing, especially with river flooding, that what happened in 2020 is far, far more than what we are having now in terms of river flooding. But when it comes to urban flooding or flash flood, it is somehow intensifying, like the correspondence mentioned, and you rightly mentioned to what happened in Abuja in the month of September.
Okay, again, we always have this walk through the various types of flooding. Just what is impacting the country the most at the moment? Is it river flooding? Is it urban flooding? Or is it coastal flooding? And when I'm more concerned now, say, about even river flooding, because we saw what happened in Kebbi State last year. We do not appear to be having such reports just yet from Kebbi. Are you expecting more waters from upstream River Niger?
I think it is the urban flooding that have been wreaking havoc in Nigeria for 2021. This same, on the 22nd of September 2020, the flood level in Niamey, when we reference Niamey in Niger Republic, because whatever happens there moves on to Nigeria. 22nd of September 2020, the height or the flood level of River Niger in Niamey was 6.50 meters. That was the height. The same date, that is yesterday, 22nd of September 2021, so just ordinary 4.63 meters. If you compare it to the previous years, what is played out that we are not likely to experience river flooding of the magnitude of what we saw last year, if I thought it will occur in 2021. But I was online speaking with the governor of Kebbi State, His Excellency Senator Abaka Atiku Bagudu, and it was like a sign of relief, because he keeps calling to find out where are we related to 2020, which was, quite devastating in Kebbi State. So most likely, we won't see anything like that. As at today, is about 4.63. Last year, it was 6.50. More than 2 meters, about 2 meters difference. That cannot, translate to anything of that magnitude of last year.
Okay, we'll keep talking about the rise and fall of this water level as we continue, because we're in the heat of the season at the moment. Abbas Idris, Abuja has gotten its fair share of, negatively, I must say, of flooding. This year, the 12th and the 13th of this month will really go down in history as bad days for this city, where you have maybe 4 people died, and of course 166 houses, destroyed, and a lot of other infrastructure, especially drainage and some other things. And how bad was the situation, looking at especially what happened yesterday. It went all throughout the day, and I could remember our correspondent was somewhere, you know, giving us updates on situations where you've gone there. Now, tell us, what is some of the situation and how are you taking care of it?
Well, thank you very much. Really, we had a very bad time, as you said, especially what happened at Trademore Estate. 4 people lost their lives innocently, and it was really devastating. And these are the areas that we had concentrated most because of the prediction issued by NISA and NIMET that AMAC is going to have flooding. And we had already mapped out those areas in the FCT that we were expecting such flooding to occur. And Trademore was one of those notorious places that we keep giving concentration on.
Before you continue, why Trademore?
Yes, because of a lot of infractions in that estate. They have conscripted the waterways. Apart from building on the waterways, they also conscripted the remaining part of the waterways. And a lot of refuse dumping in that area. And, you know, Trademore is along the way where discharge pass from other districts, that is coming down from Lokogoma down to Galadima roundabout. At the Galadima roundabout, the march is a hub of about 9 districts. Then from there, it takes its way down to River Niger. And when you get to that side, you are getting towards Trademore. And so the building, most of the houses were built on that waterways. That place is not supposed to be habitable for, to be built for any person at that point in time. And then apart from that, like I said, they conscripted the remaining part of the waterway. So definitely when water comes, it will pass through and get to its own point.
Well, let me still stay with you because you mentioned Lokogoma. Yeah. In previous years, Lokogoma was always in the news. Yeah. Happily this year, Lokogoma has not been in the news. Yeah. What is the trick? Yeah, the trick was that the same thing that happened is happening at Trademore happened at Lokogoma. Lokogoma built on the waterways as well, but at that time when we identified those infractions, more than 250 houses were removed immediately, and thereby the ownership of the estate was also inculcated to the residents of the area, and so they took it upon themselves that nobody will come and build or dump refuse or block the drainages, and that is what has been happening since 2018 to date. And we have not had anything devastating from Lokogoma. And all the waterways from Lokogoma down to Galadima roundabout were all expanded. Those who built any retention walls were removed. So it paved way for storm water to flow freely. And that was exactly what happened there. And then we are having sanity in Lokogoma. Okay, thanks, Abbas Idris. Let's go to Port Harcourt, where Godwin Topiko, who is the Zonal Director of South-South for NEMA, is. Just give us a sense of what is happening. We know that, of course, Rivers, from its name, is a coastal area. You have more months of rainfall. But what has been the experience this year?
Thank you. In Rivers State, it's been predicted that major cities will experience urban flooding this year. NISA and NIMET had given us that prediction. And as a South-South Zonal Office, we had carried out campaigns and sensitization and awareness across the states, cascading down even to the local governments to organize stakeholders meeting to inform residents of the implication of the prediction this year. So what we experienced in Port Harcourt, particularly a couple of days is just a confirmation of the prediction that major cities will suffer from urban flooding. And Port Harcourt is a major city in Rivers State. From our experience, especially the flood of Tuesday this week, when my officers went out for an assessment, we observed that the drains were blocked. We also observed that because of indiscriminate disposal of waste, poor waste management in the city, the water could not find its way out into the river. Again, what we observed was that the capacity of the drainage system is not such that can take the volume of water that came from the heavy rainfall that occurred that day. So the result was heavy flooding within the city. Major cities were flooded. Besides Port Harcourt, government areas like Emoha, like Ogba, Egbema, and Ndoni were also flooded. We have been there to do assessment to see the level of impact the flood had caused on these communities and the local government areas. So that has been our experience. It's largely because of urban flooding, where you find that the drainage capacity is not sufficient, it's not large enough to take the volume of water that came from the rain that day. And because it's urban and flooding and flash flood, much later, a couple of hours, when we drove around town again, we discovered that the whole water had disappeared. So our advice to residents has been that there should be conscious effort to continue to clean the drainages. And residents should be discouraged from using the waterways as receptacle for disposal of garbage and refuse. Because once that is done, it will not continue to exacerbate flooding. Because we have come to know that flooding now is socially constructed because of the values and activities and practices of citizens. That has exacerbated flooding in recent times. So if they are discouraged from these practices, it will help. And again, we have looked at, Port Harcourt is growing in urbanization. The tendency where people begin to build on water channels, begin to convert floodplains and fill them and use them for development should also be discouraged. Because these are natural reservoirs for water. And once those places are occupied, the tendency is that water naturally will find its level and begin to overflow the adjoining surroundings, causing flooding. So this has been our experience, and we have been in touch with the state to continue to advocate that there must be enforcement of building codes within the city to ensure that what is not supposed to be at a particular place should not be. Development should be characterized. Wherever we have drainages should be there. Wherever we have buildings should be there. And we should not continue to build indiscriminately to block the waterways. We have also advised that the river canals and channels should be desilted, because once these waterways are clogged by silt, of course, it will reduce the volume of water it can take. And the tendency is that the runoff will begin to overflow the surrounding and cause flooding. So that has been the issue in Port Harcourt. It's largely that of urban flooding.
Well, thank you so much, Godwin from Port Harcourt. Let's hear from you, Kayode Fagbemi, Director Relief and Rehabilitation, NEMA. At this point in time in the year, I must say, you at NEMA are having it not really easy, given the fact that a lot is happening around the country in terms of devastation of flood. Adamawa State, for instance, as you might have heard, had, 74,000 people displaced, and of course, about maybe 4 people that have died. And as we just mentioned, 7 people died, really. And as we've mentioned here, Abuja had its own share, and a lot of other places. You've just had Port Harcourt, and of course, some other places. Now, your table is really filled up, and of course, we are not yet at the peak of the season, and there is much more coming. How worrisome is this situation to you at NEMA?
Thank you very much. May I first say on behalf of the DG NEMA, I want to thank the NTA for the way you have taken up the challenge concerning flood. I remember we've been here now severally talking about this flood, even this year. That shows the commitment you have. It is very worrisome to NEMA. Just yesterday, our zonal coordinator on Gombe informed me that in Krifi local government, some people were displaced as a result of the flooding, and they are in the primary school. And then the school now want to resume. They now ask her, what can you do? We want the school because the people are in school. We want to take them away. And I told her, it is not our responsibility. People see response or preparedness or mitigation as only NEMA's responsibility. Every little thing. I said, look, he should find a place to keep them. We are there to support the state. And until every level of governance realize this, we will continue to have problems. They want NEMA now to go and build camp, a tent for them, and relocate. Of course, you are going to make the people, the children not to be able to go to school for those periods. We have a lot of reports, so many reports. That of Trademore, the report is, when you see the report, the number of vehicles, over 15 vehicles destroyed, so many people's houses, affected, they lost their valuables. Every state of the federation we have report. This is apart from the conflict. We have people displaced as conflict. We have the Northeast. We have so much on our table. It is very worrisome. But we know on our side, we know that flood can only be tackled through 2 major processes: the structural measures and non-structural measures. For the structural measures, like the FCDA did, remove those buildings. We can't do that. For the culverts, drainages, the states have to do that. Our non-structural measures are the education we give, the campaign awareness, in telling people to remove, the siltation, and then ensure they don't, there's proper management. This year, 13th of October, is the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. The UN recognizes that governance is the major issues. The theme this year is disaster risk reduction governance. If the local government realizes that whatever they build can be destroyed within a day, they will leave some money and have the committee or agency to manage disaster, to prevent it. If the state government realizes that a lot of resources, millions, billions can be wasted within 2 days, they will make sure that they are able to prevent. So the UN is emphasizing risk reduction governance. Let everybody, every state, every local government, individuals make effort. The resources is no longer available. There are so many requests for relief materials. It's not just possible any longer because we know the situation currently. And so you must reduce the risk, because we know that 7 to 10 naira you spend on relief, if you spend 1 or 2, you prevent it. What does it cost? How much does it cost, to move the drainages? How much to clean it? How much does it cost to expand those things? I want to say that many of those drainages were built long time ago. But because now urbanization has, come up, as I mentioned the other day, we have now increased runoff. That's what is happening everywhere. The increased runoff, because of the paving of our compound, the estate was not there. The treatment estate was not there before. But now, go there. The report I have on my table is that everybody has cemented its compound. So where does the water go? It can't infiltrate, it can't percolate, it can't go anywhere. So it's increasing the runoff. Everybody wants a clean compound, no green area. Even some of the, floodplain there have been converted. And you think we are clever. I think everybody, we must take the right decision now so that we don't continue to spend money diverting resources to relief and rehabilitation.
Oh, Fagbemi, if I may just add here, whenever there is flood like this, a lot of money is being spent on relief materials and the transportation and taking care of the victims and the rest of them. And one would wonder if such amount of money is being used to really take care of the situation before the rain starts and even engage the state governments, that is in state and local governments, in trying to see to it that if we had great losses this year, we should not have half of such